Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. We've got a busy week ahead. I know I've got some travel coming up, and we've got, oh boy, a lot of NBA basketball to talk about. I got to tell you, Keith, knowing what's ahead of me right now, that I've got a lot of travel coming up. I'm going to be doing a lot of shows not in my studio. It feels good to finally, even if it's only briefly, be back home. My very short visit to your hometown, to Orlando. Oh my goodness, that was hectic.
Yeah, and cold here too,
And cold.
which you don't expect. Or you expect to come to Florida and have it be nice and sunny and warm, and it's a little chilly here right now. That's why I'm all bundled up in the long sleeves and everything. But it's yeah, it was it's that time of year, right? We got a million things going on, and even though school is out for both of our kids, it's where still it feels like there's 10 million things going on, and maybe a little bit of basketball too,
A little bit.
thrown in there. But yeah, and just so everybody knows, as is going to be our annual tradition, we're going to do our Christmas themed episode a little bit later this week, where we will give a gift to every NBA team as we go through, just like we did last year. We'll have a lot of fun and goof around, and yeah, it's more of a lighthearted, fun show. We'll have a good time with that one.
Yeah, it's a blast. I'll have to break out the snow falling graphic and do all that stuff with it. It'll be
that's
the
only reason I'm coming.
That's the only reason you're going to be here is for that. Yeah, it's going to be a good time, and yeah, we'll have some fun with it. But we've got a ton to get into today. A lot of things that are going on around the league right now, and I guess let's start with this. You know, Keith, I got the day I was getting ready to travel to, or I can't even keep my days straight at this point. The day I was getting ready to travel
Monday,
to Orlando,
I think.
I looked at my clock and I said, okay, cool. I can sleep for about an hour, maybe two, before I have to head to the airport because I finished up my my show that night. I had an early morning flight. And as I laid down to go to sleep, I got a text message saying my flight was canceled. And so I had to scramble. I got an even earlier flight. I didn't sleep at all. But I'm telling you all of this simply because that was the second worst notification that I got over the weekend. The worst was the one that said that Anthony Davis was out due to injury. The Lakers wound up winning that game anyway against the Denver Nuggets, had an incredible second half without AD. But Anthony Davis, it's weird, everybody. This is strange. This is not normal for us still to be sitting here and not know what the injury is and have everything so hush-hush. It could break at any moment. Darvin Ham said last night that the team should be letting everybody know what's going on sometime today, and that Davis met with doctors last night. All we've heard is the Shams report that he's out for 4 weeks, maybe more. But again, we don't even know exactly what happened to him. Right now, it's just right foot soreness. So, Keith, that's got me pretty worried about what could really be going on here.
Yeah, it's rarely good when it doesn't come out right away. And we've heard some reporting that he's seeing other specialists and doctors and those kind of things. And that has me a little bit nervous. Obviously the Lakers will be smart with this. I think they are very cognizant of where they sit in the standings right now. It is not going to be worth anything to rush Anthony Davis back or to ask him to play through anything or anything like that. So, but the real question is, what is the real injury? And then what is the timeline to get back? And I think the challenge with this is it's now we're days later. This isn't just a day later or a couple days. This is what now? Friday was when he initially got hurt, if I'm right on my timing, and it's Monday. And to your point, we still don't know. And it's late in the day Monday because we're into the afternoon on the West Coast too, as we're recording this a little later in the day for us.
Yeah.
On Monday afternoon. Normally, if we record early Monday afternoon, you'd say, all right, it's morning on the West Coast. They probably just haven't gotten fully going yet, and that's tough. And clearly, any lengthy absence, so anything more than a couple weeks for Anthony Davis, that is, I don't want to say the death blow to the Lakers season, but it's going to be pretty close. It's going to be hard for them to hang in there, despite the fact, as you said, they won Friday and they won Sunday. So I don't know, maybe he's been the problem all along, and they just needed to get him.
Don't do that, because there are fans that will run with that kind of stuff, and
I've seen. Hey, you forget it was less than a week ago. I did a live show with you, and I
That's
certainly
right.
saw
You
this the sentiment out there of AD's got to go. This guy stinks, and that's very cool. 29 teams would be very happy. Just if it's that bad, please salary dump him with a pick. Forget Russ.
there
Move him
there
to
were
a pick.
there it's a weird dynamic where there are fans that were super excited about everything AD was doing. There were some that were saying, well, he's going to get hurt, so trade him quickly before something like that happens. And so of course they're taking victory laps right now. But
Sure.
there's also this subset that we've seen that hasn't been as big of a thing this year of Russell Westbrook fans, or stans, if you will, as the kids would say, who want to deflect any blame from Russ on what's going on. So everything is anti-Anthony Davis, everything is anti-LeBron or anti-coach, anti-front. They just want to put blame elsewhere. So that's been a thing too, where you've got kind of these different subsets that take shots at different players depending on which player they're actually a fan of. Anyway, it's bizarre. So right now, if you're the Lakers, I would have to imagine that any team the Lakers call up in any attempt to try to add pieces right now are going to try to completely fleece the Lakers in any deal, right? I mean, they're going to, if you're trying to add talent, they're going to say, well, you guys are desperate because AD's out, so we want everything, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, if it hasn't been happening already, it's going to
I think
be
it has.
really amped up. I think now, even in the Beverly and none for a player who maybe is more salary relief for the other side, they're still going to want something of value. Give us one of those first, and even if you need to throw protections on it, we'll take that. Or give us those two guys and an unprotected pick or something along those lines. For me, if I'm the Lakers, nothing changes. I am whatever I've drawn my line at, that line still remains the same, because I don't know that it's weird to say this. I just looked, they're 3.5 games out of fifth. So that's really crazy, just considering how compact the West is. But I think what you have to do if you're the Lakers is you have to be smart about this, because you're 3.5 games out of fifth, but you've got a whole mountain of teams to climb if you're even going to get that high. So you got to be really, really smart in this decision making and not allow yourself to be fleeced and make a panic trade or anything like that. They've done well so far to hang in there and say, nope, we're not doing this. We're not giving up both picks just to get rid of Russ. That's not going to be how this plays out. So, continue to hang in there, because I don't know. Yeah, maybe this takes you out of the running to rally back and make the playoffs, if he's out long term. But there's no guarantee that was going to happen anyway. So I would stay strong with whatever line I've drawn. And this is our value that we have attached to players, whether it be internally or externally. Hey, hold strong to that. You can't move off that just because of this injury.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Agree 100%. All right. Speaking of players that the Lakers have targeted and kind of posturing and trade negotiation and all that kind of stuff, the Pistons reportedly are telling teams that they want to keep Bojan Bogdanovic. That's also normal this time of year, right? Like this is, so I don't want to say like, oh, the Pistons are lying, they're definitely trading him. No, like they have legitimate reasons why they would want to keep him and why they think that he can be a great mentor to Cade Cunningham and a great fit alongside Cade Cunningham and all of these things. But we also know that this time of year is when everybody sets their prices super high. I saw earlier today somebody made the comment like the way it works is in December prices are super high. In January, they're really high. And then in February, right before the deadline, then they get more realistic and you can actually
That
do
was
the
Eric
deal.
Pincus wrote that.
Was that Eric? I
Buddy,
couldn't remember
Eric
who
Pincus,
put that.
yes. Yeah, and I was going to bring up that same line, and he's spot on. Yeah,
Yes.
that's exactly what happened.
Absolutely. So that could be what the Pistons saying this about Bogdanovic could be part of that dynamic where they're saying, well, you know what, the offers that have come in so far, we're not even trading him then. No, we're not interested. Maybe something by February, that sometime around then that changes. But for now, they're telling teams, you know what, he's playing great and we think he can be a long-term fit with us. So we're just going to keep him.
Yeah, I think there's truth to it. I don't think this is nowhere near. The Pistons are not desperate to move him or anything, but I also think if a team comes in and says, "Hey, here's 3 future firsts and swap rights," and then the Pistons are gonna be like, "Sure, done, let's go." Like this is, they're basically just saying, "Hey, if you want the guy, you're gonna have to pay to get him." Now, we're a month and a half away from the trade deadline. Let's see what happens when we get closer. If they're really falling out, some team is desperate for a wing scorer and says, hey, we can get there, and they are willing to throw an unprotected first or something like that, then I think maybe Detroit starts to rethink that whole idea of, we want to have him because we think he's a good fit alongside Cade Cunningham when he gets back. You know what? There'll be other guys who are really nice fits alongside Cade Cunningham too that they might be able to go get. So, but Bogdanovic, hey, he's playing great too. So you also have to factor in that into your ask. If you're the Pistons, he's playing really, really good basketball. So you want to make sure, like, hey, this is not a guy we're just giving away, or somebody who's like, maybe he'll, turn it around and figure it out for you. Like he has played, wonderful basketball this year too. So I think there's posturing in there, but I think there's a lot of truth in there as well.
Yeah, right. I don't think this is just a bluff. And we'll see. It could be that the price remains super high and the offers are lower, and a deal doesn't come about. That's certainly possible. I mean, it reminds me in some ways a little bit different dynamic, but of Houston with Eric Gordon, where they've consistently said it's a first round pick for Eric Gordon, and teams have said no, and so Eric Gordon is still with the Rockets. There's been no deal because of that. So we'll see
for 4 years running. It
literally right. From what as I recall, there were teams at one point, I don't know if it was last season or season before, but there were teams that were offering up first, but it was a first and
a
salary.
Player,
right? And that was what derailed any deal. But now we're still.
Well, and then they wanted to attach him to John Wall a couple
Mhm.
years ago, and that turned into a whole thing that no one was willing to do. So it is kind of funny how those things come. But now we're down to, this is probably his last year in Houston. At least my guess is his last year on this contract. So that could start to change things a little bit there, and and then we'll see. But this is what you do. Ask, because if you're the Pistons or you're the Rockets, what's trading him today or trading him a month and a half? It's not going to change much for you. The only thing that could change is the player gets hurt and then nobody wants to trade for him. But chances that are fairly minor, and that's not the way you're going to make your decisions moving forward.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're maybe February 8th, Houston goes, okay, 2 seconds. Right. And then, maybe that could happen.
Yep.
Kyle Kuzma made it known that he is going to decline his player option, or at least that's the plan right now. And this makes perfect sense. This isn't even necessarily a sign that he wants to leave the Wizards. I know there's been some of that buzz going around, and there might be other reasons why, but him just declining his player option doesn't say anything about his future. It simply says he would like to make more money in his future, and the current contract that he's on isn't going to offer him as much as the open market almost certainly will, barring some sort of injuries, scoring over 20 points per game right now for the Washington Wizards. So Kyle Kuzma should be in for a big payday. Why not go the extension route, Keith, here? I know you wanted to discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, it's because of the extension rules for a player like Kyle Kuzma are, to put it simple, they're kind of broken. When guys can do the supermax extension, those are great because that gets the guy, he jumps the salary tier, he gets paid, life-changing, $200 million contracts. We're approaching $300 million contracts in the league. Now, in a challenge with Kuzma is he can only get 120% because he's not supermax eligible. So he makes $13 million right now. That'd be a first year salary of $15.6 million in this rising cap environment. For a guy who scores 20 points per game, he's hit the boards fairly well this season. He shoots it well. Should be fairly easy to plug and play into most other teams because he can play either forward spot. $15.6 million is not nearly enough for Kyle Kuzma in first year salary or a new contract. He's going to get 20 to 25 million easy, without a doubt. And I know I had some people when I said this the other day, like, Kyle Kuzma's going to get 25 million. You have to readjust. 25 million is what you pay for a good player, even a non-all-star level guy. And he may still yet crack that all-star level. So that's why he's not going to extend right now, because he would just leave way too much money on the table. It's similar about half the salary, to why Jaylen Brown won't sign an extension with Boston, because it's the same thing. He'd have to leave too much money on the table. So I'll have a piece coming on Spot Track, probably later this week. So if you need to run and hide from the family a little bit and post up and read something, you'll be able to read this breaking down why Kyle Kuzma will not do an extension, and it'll lay out all the numbers and the math and everything, explaining just how much money he'd leave on the table to do so.
Right, right. So again, don't look at this and take this as a sign of what
No.
his future plans are. This is simply a financial. It just makes no sense. And maybe this is something that gets addressed in the future CBA, because I don't even know if this is a positive thing where you have players where an extension being offered to them is not a good thing, or
Yeah, it's not
is not
right.
something that they can accept. Right.
Yeah, because it they still have the choice, right? If they still want to say, I want to hold out and see, or I really don't want to be here anymore, outside of the guys coming off the rookie scale, because of the way restricted free agency works. I personally think restricted free agency is a little too punitive to the players too, but
It is.
that's a topic we can discuss later. But yeah, I think for the veteran players, they still have their choice if they want to do this or not. And if you don't want to sign, great. So progress forward, play out your contract, opt out, and move on in the offseason. You don't need to do the extension if that's really what you don't want to do. I'll say this too. Now, from the Wizards side, it becomes a little tricky for them
Absolutely.
because you now have a decision to make. He's making it clearly known he's going to decline his player option. He was always going to do that. That player option is only for $13 million, too. Remember, right? He signed with the Lakers, a very good contract for the Lakers when he signed it, of $13 million a year flat, right? So that was a great deal that he signed with them a couple seasons back. So now what we look at here is this is a situation where he was always going to decline that and opt out and get more money. But now that he's making it so known, you're playing a little bit of a gamble here, right? They can still offer him more than anybody else can, because they can offer him 5 years. They could offer him the 8% raises versus the 5%. They can give him all the same stuff any other team can give him. They can just give him more money. But if you're Kuzma and you're looking at it and saying, I kind of think I'd like to go here. I'd like to go somewhere where maybe I'm getting more touches because there's Beal and Porzingis here, or whatever the case may be. If you would all start to get the sense of this guy might not be around much longer, you probably have to consider trading him before the trade deadline, just because the team's probably not going anywhere. I want to say they've lost 10 or 11 in a row. Now they've lost 10 in a row. They're 11-20. They're not going anywhere this season. So trading him's not exactly going to hurt you on the floor result wise. So you got to really think about that now. If you think, all right, we feel really good that we can get him back, then maybe you look at it and say, all right, well, we're going to hang on to him. But that's a risk. So that's where that gets a little more interesting.
Yeah, your decision making tree essentially with Kyle Kuzma. If you're the Wizards, the first thing you have to think about is, do we want him long term? Do we think that this is a player that is a long term fit? And assuming the answer to that is yes, then it becomes, what's the next contract going to look like, and are we comfortable with paying that? And that's where you've got to have the conversations with him. You've got the benefit. He's on your roster. You can have those kinds of discussions and say, hey, what is it that you're going to be looking for in this next deal? Let's see, are we going to be comfortable paying that? Doesn't mean he has to commit to, hey, if you guys offer this, I'll stay. That kind of stuff could be, mentioned or whatever. But
sure,
it's just a matter of going through and saying, if he's going to make $25 million next year, if that's what it is that he wants, if that's what it's going to take to potentially keep him, are we okay with doing that? And what's the likelihood of us keeping him? And then you use that decision-making process to inform what you do next, whether or not you decide to move him before the trade deadline. Because what you really can't do if you're the Wizards is you can't just have it be totally up in the air, or come to the decision that you're going to just let him walk away and lose him for nothing.
yeah,
Right. You really can't do that. That's one of the most damaging things that we see happen in the NBA is when you lose a player and you don't really get anything out of it. So they need to either feel like they're okay with paying him and they have a pretty good shot at keeping him on whatever his next contract is going to be, or you need to move him by the deadline.
Yeah, Kyle Kuzma, one heck of an alternative to the teams who maybe can't get Bojan Bogdanovic, if you can't get a deal done for him, because similar-ish player as far as the way they play and what they offer to you as a team, and he makes less money. He makes about $6 million or so less than Bogdanovic does.
And in terms of capital, what you have, I would have to imagine Kuzma commands a larger return on a deal.
Yeah, I think
Because
so.
age,
He's enough younger. Yeah, not enough younger. It's a little harder because Bogdanovic is under contract already for the next couple
True.
seasons, and you got to pay Kuzma if you trade for him. Related, really interesting summer coming for the Wizards. I know we're miles away from that yet, but
Mhm.
Porzingis has a player option. He's probably going to opt out. Rui Hachimura is a restricted free agent. Will Barton's contract expires. Denny Avdia is extension eligible. That wouldn't kick in until the 24-25 season. But you've got a lot of stuff, and you've got Beal kind of as the only significant money sitting on your books long term. Daniel Gafford does have that extension that he bumps up to $12 million from $2 million this year. So there's just some stuff the Wizards got to work through. And again, you feel like this could be an opportunity to move Kuzma, get some assets, rebalance things, reset yourself a little bit, especially if you're not fully convinced he's a guy to walk into paying long term.
We've talked a lot about the fact that there's not that many teams on the market right now that are sellers, and the Wizards are a team that could very easily flip into sell mode. Another such team is the Chicago Bulls. That's the team that you most often hear that teams are, kind of keeping their eye on them to see if they ultimately decide to become a seller on the market and trade away some players. Zach LaVine was not thrilled with the Bulls play, losing by 24 against a depleted Minnesota Timberwolves side. He said, "It's embarrassing. We're all a little embarrassed about it." Also added that he knows it's frustrating for the fans. So where does this leave Chicago now? I mean, they are 11-18 at the moment. I know last we heard they're saying, no, we're not trading away guys like DeRozan. We're not trading Vucevic. We're not doing, but as these losses pile up, you have to imagine they've got to start seriously considering looking ahead to the future.
Yeah, you have to, because you're looking at they're 5.5 games out now of the 6th seed, and that's the final assured playoff spot. So if you're Chicago, you're really looking at it saying, all right, well, we can get into the play-in and really make a run here and go. They're not beating Milwaukee. They're not beating Boston. And I say this knowing they've already beaten the Celtics twice this year. Probably not beating Cleveland, Brooklyn, Philly if they jump up there. Probably not getting either one of them. So it's kind of as sad as it is, because we're basically a year away from everything looking great for the Bulls. They were one of the best teams in the East at this time a year ago. You got to really start looking at it and saying, because this is how quick things move in the NBA. Where are we going this year, next year, year after? Vucevic comes off the books. So are we going to re-sign him, or are we going to let him go? Well, what's our plan there? If we let him go, they don't really have the cap space to replace him, because next season you've got Lonzo on the books at $20.5 million. You've got DeRozan at $28.6, and you've got LaVine at $40.1 million. So you're completely out of cap space. You've got no chance at replacing Vucevic if he leaves. So you got to really start to have those conversations and say, all right, what are we doing? Where are we going as a team? And I know that's rough, because, again, a year ago, you were the
They
best
were
team in the
fun.
East. Yeah, they were playing really well. It was like, man, it was all the Bulls are back. Everybody
Yep.
felt great about it. And now it's just gotten really messy. And not only that, what's going on with Lonzo? Is he going to be back? Is he not? What's going on with Zach LaVine? He doesn't look exactly right when he's out there. And as well as he has played during his time in Chicago, you got to be very realistic with yourself that DeMar DeRozan is 33 years old now, and that's tough. Where are we at? How far are we going to get with him as well moving forward? How many more years of all-star level play are we going to get out of DeMar DeRozan?
I mean, no Gobert, no Towns, and you give up 150 points to the Wolves. Now, now the Wolves shot 66% from the field, 54% from three. I mean, like some of that's just
I watched
not
the game this morning because I wanted to see what happened.
Yeah.
A lot of wide open shots for Minnesota. If it wasn't a layup right down the lane, it was wide open jump shots.
So I mean, even wide open though, that's still above
for
what you would expect.
No
but
doubt.
nonetheless, it's not just that team just had a hot shooting night. The Bulls have had some real issues here.
Yeah.
It's not something you can just dismiss. And that's with DeRozan dropping 29, with Vucevic dropping 23, with LaVine putting up 22. Like that's got to be concerning if you're the Chicago Bulls right now. So we'll see ultimately what this team decides to do. This is a tough spot for them to be in for sure.
Without a doubt.
Let's talk a little bit about, let's get into this. Let's do a positive. Light the beam.
Light the
right?
beam.
Monty McNair.
Did you hold on? Did you see the beam? They made it brighter now.
They did?
Yeah, so fans were like, it needs to be brighter, like make it
Oh,
even brighter. So I don't know how you do such a thing. I'm far from a beam lighting expert, but they made it brighter. Vivek Ranadive came out and said, "We heard you. We made it brighter." So now people are like, "Let's make it brighter after every win." I'm all in on the beam.
it's going to be blinding
Yeah,
by the end of the
I want to
season.
see it from here in Orlando. Like I want to walk out, turn my eyes to the west, and see the beam after a Kings win.
It's
That's
going
my
to be
goal.
like, isn't it? Like you can see the lights from Las Vegas in space and stuff like that. It's going to
Something
be
like
like
that,
that.
yeah. Yeah, that's it should be.
Yeah.
That's the hope, right? Let's go. Maybe that's how we finally make contact with alien societies, the Sacramento Kings. Make it happen because the beam just has to keep getting stronger.
It's sending multiple Voyagers, untold millions of miles into space at ridiculous speeds is not enough, but lighting the beam will draw the aliens here. Is that a good thing that we draw
Yeah,
the
because
aliens
then they
here?
see like Darren Fox and Sabonis and Keegan Murray and those guys, and like, man, whatever this is fun. And then they decide like, where that's it. We're gonna make friends with the people on that strange planet versus attacking them. And
We come in
there it is.
peace,
Yeah,
right?
there it is. Yeah,
We
that's
come
not.
in meta world peace.
Yeah, there it is. Well
There we
done.
go. There
Got
we
it right
go.
back.
We found it. So Monty McNair operating in the last year of his deal. Obviously, the Kings have had success this year. Finally, we're seeing success for the Sacramento Kings. Does a lot of people say, "Hey, okay, where's the extension then?" Right? Let's reward people for good things happening. What happens here with him? Have to imagine Sacramento's going to take care of him. He took a big risk making the Sabonis trade, and it seems to have. I mean, this is one of those trades that really seems to have worked out for both teams that were involved when we talk Indiana and Sacramento.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because I think we took the approach of like, yeah, weird that they traded Halliburton so quickly, but this could the puppy wants to play with the other dog. He's got thoughts on the Kings trade. But yeah, we thought weird that they give up Halliburton so quickly, but on the flip side, it was like, all right, people are murdering the Kings here. They got a really good player in Sabonis back. Like this isn't as insane as it seems. But yeah, reporting from Mark Stein is everybody around the league expects this will get done sometime in the new calendar year, which is it's a little weird. We've got a couple GMs now working out the end of their contract without an extension, and that's a little odd considering we're hitting into a very big period at the trade deadline where hey, if am I going to be here, am I not, I got to make all these decisions. But my guess is the Kings they'll get this right and say, all right, well, let's do this, let's get Monty McNair locked up, let's move forward, and let's keep the good times rolling here in Sacramento as long as we can.
Yeah, that's going to be important for them is to, once you've found the success, find consistency and see if you can just keep that ball rolling forward there.
And the Sabonis trade's a big one that still jumps out, almost a year later. But drafted Keegan Murray, he's starting to really figure it out. The trade for Kevin Huerter this offseason, really good trade. And then signing Malik Monk. And really, important too. Last year, even though they didn't end up making the postseason, being in a position to get a guy like Malik Monk. Because it's not like they came out and said, hey, Malik Monk, here's $25 million a season and vastly overpaid him, which is quite frankly what the Kings would have done, year over year over year. It was like, hey, yeah, exactly. You want our mid-level exception, and not even all of it. Like we're going to carve a little bit out for a plan that didn't end up coming through, but we're going to, will we take a little bit less? And he did. I mean, they've really built a nice roster there in Sacramento.
They absolutely have. Absolutely have. Some more positive news here. The Atlanta Hawks have some players coming back, including a favorite of yours and mine, John Collins, perpetually on the trade block, and DeJounte Murray potentially getting back in action as well. Good news for a Hawks team that's been struggling a bit, particularly with, Trae Young kind of has been in a weird shooting slump, and hopefully this will help bring some stability to Atlanta.
Yeah, if you're Atlanta, what your goal now is get these guys back and give yourself the next month to really, all right, what are we? Like we got to figure this out. What is it we are? What is it we're going to be? How do we move forward? Just not only for the rest of this season, but what are we setting up for in the years to come? Because they've got some decisions to make, with this. And if you're trying to move Collins, not that teams need to see him play, but you'd feel a little bit better if you can get back at a handful of games under his belt and look pretty good. Then you can move on from that. So yeah, this is good news for a Hawks team that's been kind of floating around 500 all year long.
Yeah, exactly. All right, another topic that you and I have spoken about quite a bit. We'll finish with this. Expansion. Finally, it feels like Adam Silver has been saying, well, we're not sure on anything. He's been kind of hemming and hawing about it and everything and not wanting to commit. Now he's like, yeah, it's coming, right? Like this is gonna happen. You and I have been talking about it. Keith, I think I saw on Twitter, you put your own prediction out there of it'll get approved within 3 years, it'll be official, and then we'll have new teams in the league in the next, I think you put 4 to 5 years. Is that right?
I think it's in 5 to 6.
Maybe it was 5 to 6.
I don't know, but somewhere in that range. Yeah.
Yep. So expansion is coming to the NBA.
And it absolutely is. Adam Silver, for years, basically since he took over. So what happens is the commissioner gives kind of a state of the NBA address a couple times a year, usually at All-Star Weekend, then usually right before the start of the NBA Finals. And he gets asked every single time, are we going to expand? Is there going to be expansion? What's going on with expansion? He has repeatedly said no. Not even in consideration. Nothing we're thinking about. We want 30 healthy, stable franchises. And he basically had a very canned answer that he gave every single time. Even when there were credible reports of, the NBA has been working with Seattle. They've been working with this other market and this one and kind of looking at it. He's always still held firm to no. First time he kind of let it slip a little bit was when they were coming back from the pandemic. And they said, remember, there was all those rumors. Could expansion be the way owners could recoup a bunch of money and all this stuff? And first time he ever came out and he said, we've dusted off the expansion analysis. We're going to relook at it. And I was like, oh, okay, now there's a little something here. Now the last 2 years since that pandemic impacted season, that initial one that finished in the bubble, he has basically said it's not something we're looking at now, but it's something we could look at down the line. So what happened this week was the Spurs and Heat played in the Mexico City game. So he was there. Mark Tatum was there as well. Mark Tatum, the deputy commissioner, was asked about the G League team, the Mexico City Capitans. Could this be a way for Mexico City to get a team? Are you trying them out as a market? And he basically said, without saying it directly, but yeah, we're seeing what it could look like. Can a team be functional here with the travel and the logistics and all the things that are required? Then Adam Silver basically doubled down and said, yeah, we're looking at Mexico City and Mexico as our gateway into further growth in Latin America. And they both brought out a whole bunch of stats about how basketball is now the second most popular sport in Mexico behind soccer and all these things. And then directly said, Adam Silver's quote was, which should get people excited if you're looking forward to being 2 more teams or more or whatever, was we've got to do the CBA first, then our media rights deal, then we will turn to expansion. It wasn't then we'll think about it, then maybe we'll look at it. Was we will turn to expansion. So the reason I said 3 years is this year's all about the CBA. Got to get that done this year. They just extended the mutual opt-out to February. It's going to get done. They're going to get the CBA done. It will happen. Then it's, all right, we got to figure out how we split up this, media rights deal. We're going to make billions upon billions of dollars. We're all going to be, richer than we ever could. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion in there of how do we split this among 32 teams, 34 teams, whatever the number is. And then it will be, all right, we're expanding, and here's where we go. I've long held to they're going to add 2 teams, get up to 32. I'm starting to wonder if they say, let's be the first to get to 34. Let's own a couple markets where there's no other North American professional sport. Let's get into Mexico City. Then let's get Seattle and Las Vegas, because they're not going to lose those 2 markets fully to all the other teams that have come in. We'll do those 2. We'll do Mexico City, and maybe it'll be let's get back into Canada, somewhere else in Canada.
Do Vancouver again?
Vancouver. I think there's a chance we see this. And then if you go to 34, then what you could really do is you could put all 4 of those teams in the West, because those would all be West teams. And then you could move Minnesota and Memphis, get them to the East. There's your
Mm.
17 and 17. Off you go. Your league makes a lot more sense with the way it's structured and balanced. You build out your divisions, conferences, however you do it, and off you go, and everybody goes. 34 might be ambitious, but I remember this is going way, way back. People forget they brought 4 teams in once before. They brought in Orlando, the original Charlotte Hornets, the Miami Heat, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. 4 teams, 1 round of expansion. They brought them in 2 teams 1 year, 2 teams the next year because they were a little conscious of we don't introduce 4 expansion teams are terrible, so we don't
Mm-hmm.
want to introduce 4 terrible teams all at once and then have some team go 76-6 or something because they piled up wins. But that's how they did it. They brought those 4 teams in basically in one fell swoop, and wouldn't surprise me if I think we're going to get to 32, but would not shock me if we ended up going to 34.
That'll be interesting. And so you're saying you don't think they would do 4 at one time? They would do 2 and 2.
Maybe we'll see. They might bring in all 4 at once if they go that way. And that's more. I'm just speculating and throwing that out there. There's nothing
Right. This isn't. You're not reporting that this is what's happening.
2's gonna happen, and I strongly believe. Right, I guarantee there's expansion discussion. I can report and say I know there's discussion around what happens if we expand going on in the CBA talks. Like that is happening. And that's more just, are we good with the way it works now? We are. Okay, let's go with that. Or we want to tweak and adjust this or whatever it is. Then it's going to be CBA, get the TV deal done. And then we're going to have, all right, we're expanding. And then it'll be, we're opening up the bids and all the other stuff that goes along with all that. That'll probably take a full year to play out. We'll get the cities picked. It'll probably be 2, is my guess, more likely. And then, it'll probably take another 2 years before we see the 2 teams come kind of into fruition. It's generally about a 2-year process from we're getting a team in Seattle versus the time you actually see them come into being.
Now, I mean, I would have to imagine like Seattle from having previously had an NBA team, Las Vegas from hosting Summer League and already having the relationship with the NBA. I would think there would be a little bit of a head start in terms of building up a team. You wouldn't quite be going from scratch. Whereas like Mexico City, okay, you've got the G League, but still that would be more of a from scratch type situation. This is going to be like, we've talked about how there's enough talent to do 2 more teams, but when you talk about 4, that's 60 more regular season roster spots, or just regular roster spots that you're talking about, plus 2-way spots, add those in. Then if you want to get into G League teams, you already look around the NBA and superstars are in high demand because they're very limited. There's a limited number of them.
Mm-hmm.
Is there enough for 4 teams, enough talent for that?
I think there's enough talent eventually. That's why it probably won't be 4 right off the bat. But what I think the 4 comes into play is we don't want to lose markets to other sports, other things that happen in those markets. They're very conscious of that. I think Seattle definitely coming back. They got a hockey team. Now it becomes, all right, we can't be 4th. We can't be the 4th team. Las Vegas, if the A's end up moving there, which has been talked about a million times, you don't want to be 4th to the market, right? So you want to get back in there, get in there, really, we want our piece. We want to own it. It's, if I maybe you can't bet on such things, but if you could, I would go put a substantial amount of money on Seattle and Las Vegas. I am very convinced they will both get teams. I think then we will see the Memphis Grizzlies move to the Eastern Conference, or we will see a full-scale restructure done of the way conferences and the schedule looks and all that sort of stuff. And maybe Minnesota goes into a thing because, right, Minnesota's in a weird spot as well. We'll see something done where they rebalance things out some way or another. But I just think the reason I say 4 is I just read a thing just this week that the NFL is looking at. All right, if we were to add 2 more teams, where would we go? What cities would get those teams? What would we want to look at? And those kind of things. I think we're just in a position where it's going to be, as much as it could. 2 we can easily support in the league. There's more than enough talent. When you look at the guys who get cut, the guys who are at the end of benches that don't get to play very much, or they're bench players, and we're like, that guy should probably be a starter somewhere. There's more than enough talent. 4 all at once, I would probably dilute, but I'll say within 10 years, where the NBA will be at, probably 34 teams or pushing towards that. It just feels like it's long overdue, and they're going to be pushing. They're behind everybody else right now, right? Everybody
Mhm.
else is got more teams. I think the NHL is 32. Major League
Yep.
Baseball has what are they? They're at 30, and then the NFL's at 32. So they're not going to lag behind for too long.
Yeah, this is something that is likely. I mean, well, we know it's coming in terms of expansion, but I do think that's an interesting idea about getting into Mexico City first before some of these other leagues do, getting in
Mhm.
some other markets and just kind of capturing that market. You're already, you lost the opportunity to be first into Vegas despite already having an in sort of in that city because you've got the summer league there. So it'd be interesting to see how the NBA ultimately plays this, but sounds like it is going to happen. And I mean, obviously we're a few years away, but I can't wait to start figuring out,
Oh
okay,
man, it's
which
gonna be so
which
great.
players are teams
Mhm.
protecting and what moves are they going to be? That's going to be, oh man,
I
we're going to have stuff to talk about for forever.
I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, man, I was like, I will be content rich forever. Like, it'll be protected lists and not protected lists, and then mock drafts for the expansion, and
Yep.
all these things, and just writing explainers for how does this work. I'm already giddy about the idea of it too, and quite frankly, it's we think mostly about the players, but this is a chance to add two more full coaching staffs, two more
Hmm.
full front offices, two more rounds of PR jobs, two more rounds of business jobs for everything, two more franchises worth of that. Like you this is you're talking thousands of jobs that get created out of adding two new teams beyond all of the fun of there's two new teams. The only thing I know for certain is one is going to Seattle,
Hmm.
and people there will riot if they're not the Seattle Supersonics. Like if they try to get
Oh
cute and name
yeah,
them something
no,
else, they're gonna lose their mind. Like if they're the Seattle Salamanders or Seattle Samurais or something, like people are gonna lose their minds. Like it's got to be the Seattle Supersonics.
absolutely.
Just roll it back, same uniforms, color scheme, the whole deal. Just let's go, and people will be beyond excited about that. But yeah, it's coming, and it's coming sooner than rather than later. I think.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Should we'll see where he's at. Like Seattle, whenever that city comes back, just to kind of like try to make peace, they should just automatically be gifted Kevin Durant.
Right? Yeah.
Right? Like they,
It wouldn't
they lost
surprise
out.
me
They
if
got him
you
for what they had him for
yeah,
what a year, I think it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
Before like they
2, right? Because Westbrook played 1 year there
oh,
too.
that's right. It was Russ that was
Yeah,
1 year. That's
yeah.
right.
But yeah,
That's
I
right.
mean, yeah, you just look at what the Thunder built, like that could have been the Sonics, right? And that's what
Hmm.
they were already in process of trying to make that happen. But yeah, that's a what could have been. And Kevin Durant's talked often about how much he loved Seattle and
Hmm.
how thrilled he was to play there, and it was it was crazy. But yeah, get a little more balance to the coast too, for your league and everything. So yeah, it's coming.
It is. It is indeed. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Make sure you do subscribe right here to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. We'll be back for more this week as we get closer and closer to those Christmas Day games. Oh boy, it's almost here. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.